Copilot Plus PCs launched, but hardly anyone got them. Starlink is going mini, and Nvidia is going to the Supreme Court. Let's get into the hot news, everybody. I'm your Brett host. We're going to be going over the hottest tech news I can find on the internet while you enjoy your breakfast this Wednesday, June 19th, 2024. We're going to start off today talking about the Copilot Plus laptops that launched yesterday. They're armed with the new Snapdragon X chips, and I said they're armed with it because it's based on the ARM architecture, and we actually got ours yesterday. We have a few that we're going to be reviewing. I have the Microsoft one, forget what this is called. I'm gonna have to remember that before I actually review it. We also got something like the Samsung Galaxy Book 4 Edge, so we'll have videos coming out on this sometime soon. And if you think we're gonna be late to the party, turns out we won't be, because Microsoft didn't really send out samples to anybody due to the fact that Recall was recalled and made it so that it wasn't ready for launch. They had to put out a new Windows update that removed Recall so that reviewers only got their hands on the devices yesterday, primarily. There were a few select influencers out there who got their devices before the actual launch embargo, but for the most part, a lot of traditional media is scrambling to actually benchmark these things and get their information out, just kind of like we are. But according to the people who did have it a little bit ahead of time, these things are not quite what Qualcomm promised. They're definitely slower and less battery efficient than Qualcomm tried to make it seem, and there's going to be a lot of growing pains when it comes to using ARM on Windows. It's just a problem that continues to be there. So when it comes to battery life, it appears that the MacBook Air M3 is 40% better than the Asus VivoBook S15 OLED, despite the fact that the MacBook Air has a smaller battery. Additionally, while the Qualcomm chips actually do pretty okay when it comes to synthetic benchmarks, they don't actually perform very well when it comes to actual use cases, especially when it comes to gaming. They're downright unusable in that instance, and it's better to use other integrated GPUs. In fact, the M3 MacBook Air gets better FPS in The Witcher 3 than the VivoBook. So reviewers noting that when it comes to the integrated GPU, it's very lackluster. It does not look like it can keep up with Intel, AMD, or even Apple for that matter. However, on the CPU side, it does appear to be mildly impressive, especially on multi-core, unless you happen to compare it to something like an iPhone. The A17 Pro is actually tying the Snapdragon X Elite when it comes to certain benchmarks, like a Gravity Mark GPU test. The A17 Pro got nearly identical numbers, 2.3% difference between the two of them. So it looks like it's a mixed bag. Mostly the CPU hardware appears to be very good. The GPU hardware appears to be a little subpar, but the biggest frustration is going to be with the actual operating system. Windows on ARM still appears to be very restrictive. I will be doing a deep dive into multiple different devices over the next week or so. Hopefully I can get my thoughts out on some of these quite quickly, maybe even be ready for this weekend. But for the most part, it does not appear to be a smooth experience, and this is going to be an early adopters type thing rather than the 60% of people buying Windows Qualcomm laptops in the future. And it turns out it's going to be very difficult to buy a Fisker EV in the future because the company just announced bankruptcy. They stopped producing their vehicles earlier in 2024, and now they are declaring bankruptcy, and they're going to have to restructure and potentially make it so that they come back eventually. This is notable because MKBHD reviewed the Fisker Ocean, which was supposed to be their mainstream crossover SUV, and he gave it a terrible review, and that promptly made it so that a lot of people canceled their reservations, seemed to dry up a lot of cash that Fisker had. And honestly, it's not Marquez's fault. It's the fact that they produced a suboptimal vehicle that wasn't actually ready for mainstream. Probably would have been better had they waited to not release such a buggy car, because the issue didn't seem to be the hardware. It seemed to be the actual software experience, and that was enough to bring them down. And I want Reece to bring down the prices on tech products, because buying your own review products is expensive. Make me cheaper, Reece.
Yo, welcome back to UFD Deals, bringing the hottest tech deals out on the internet. And hey, you know, look at that. We got some deals here. Starting off with this EPOMaker GK75 Lite, which is a wired mechanical keyboard for only $29.99, making it $30 off. I'm a big fan of EPOMaker personally. I've been rocking one of their boards as my main daily driver for the last 4 years. And hey, we have another one with the EPOMaker Shadow X gasket mount wireless mechanical keyboard for only $42.99, making making it $43 off. And if you thought we were done with keyboards, well, kind of, because we have this combo featuring a Summer 3509 mid-tower ATX case, 4 pre-installed ARGB fans, and a little 60% keyboard if you want to bundle it all up for only $54.99. If you're building a system for someone from scratch, like, here you go. And with that, the deals are done. You can find these and more linked in the video description down below. But until next time, I'm gonna hand you off back to Brett for the rest of your hot news. Cheers.
Well, Reece, this is a deal that I want to pick up. SpaceX just announced that they have a Starlink Mini coming in at $299. That's the same size as an iPad Pro 13. It's gonna have baked-in Wi-Fi as well as the ability to receive satellite communication. And they're saying that you should be able to get around 100 meg down and 11 meg up on this little thing with a kickstand. This is honestly pretty cool. The only thing that I haven't found that's been reported on is how much power it's going to draw and whether or not you could potentially power it off of like a battery bank, because this could make it so cool for just like traveling out in the wilderness and getting some internet to do some work while you're just sitting in a cabin on the mountainside. It's something small where you're not bringing this whole honking Starlink setup. I really like the idea of a Starlink Mini. And I also really like the idea of the PlayStation Portal. A lot of you don't agree with me on that, but I still enjoy that piece of hardware. And Sony is finally updating it to do the thing that a lot of people complained it couldn't do, which is connect to public Wi-Fi, especially if it had a captive portal that you had to log into. Previously, the way to do it was you had to have a router that would log into the captive portal for you, and then you logged into that router by itself. But now it should just be actually fixed within the portal itself. You'll scan a QR code that's on the portal and it'll help you to actually log in. Sony does say that you'll need a public Wi-Fi that's higher than 5 megabits per second and at least 15 to have it work well. So it's not for all public Wi-Fi, but it is available now. And what's going to be available to all of us soon is the court proceeding between Nvidia and a class action lawsuit with regards to some of the crypto shenanigans that Nvidia pulled way back when. This is a class action lawsuit that has been going on for quite some time, but back in 2019, it's alleged that Nvidia lied to their shareholders by conflating how much money they were making on crypto and saying that was all gaming revenue. They told people that they were making money from one source when they were actually making it from another, which, as you might know, is known as misleading the shareholders, which is a big no-no here in the United States. And it's not just like they lied and there was no repercussions. The fact that they told everybody that the mining sales were actually gaming made it seem like they were having a boom that ended up crashing because mining ended up having a shortfall. And so it made it so that shareholders lost money based on bad advice from Nvidia themselves. So this has been going through the Court of Appeals for quite some time. It has been ruled against Nvidia, saying that yes, they did lie about it and that they were going to be forced to pay for it, but the appeals continue to happen, and now it looks like the United States Supreme Court is finally going to take up the case. But if you're wondering how the stock market's reacting to the fact that the US Supreme Court's going to find out how Nvidia was manipulating their financial data to potentially bolster their stock a little bit more than it should be, it's the world's wealthiest company now. Nvidia's number one. They are the highest, most earned company in the world. They beat Microsoft and Apple. The number goes up. Look at how big that number is. The stock is now at $135.70 as of the time of recording, which puts its market cap above every other company, which, number one, hilarious, right? Like Nvidia's going to the Supreme Court. Their stock goes up. Microsoft has a gigantic launch when it comes to Copilot Plus, everything that they've been investing. Nvidia's not involved in these Qualcomm laptops at all, and they lost. They lose to Nvidia. Too bad, so sad. Microsoft, try again another day. This is not a bubble whatsoever. This AI thing can only continue to go up. You only have to believe in straight vertical lines, baby. And I believe that you guys left some comments for me yesterday, so let's check out what you had to say. Over on Float Plane, we got Jimmy Cap saying, I'm an IT specialist at a mid-sized university in the Midwest. About the only thing I hate more than working with printers is dealing with Adobe's licensing subscription structure. It's a ridiculously frustrating cluster. You know what? If there were a viable alternative that had even the smallest level of adoption, I'd recommend my users go with that. There are like enough alternatives in each area that Adobe offers that you can reliably switch over, you can get out of Adobe. There's gonna be like cuts to various different things, and it's not a cohesive ecosystem, which makes it frustrating. It's one of the reasons why here at UFD Tech we haven't quite switched away from Adobe when it comes to a lot of the work that we do, because After Effects being worked in with Premiere, being worked in with Audition, makes a workflow much simpler. But I mean, our editor Rikus is editing this video in DaVinci Resolve right now because he was able to get away from all of the Adobe stuff. There are ways to do it, you just kind of have to go with a mishmash, which is unfortunate, but you can get away from their iron thumb. And then we got little Nicky Scarfo saying, I will play with both, but let's duel it out in Street Fighter to see who's victorious. I like the PS5, but my hands prefer the Xbox layout for longer sessions. Guess I'll have to become a mouse and keyboard player. You wanna use controllers in Street Fighter? You're not gonna bring your fight stick? Kyler, what's a good fight stick?
I forget.
I will not be participating in this. Also, I suck at every video game. The way my hands are laid out on a controller doesn't help me for anything. Then over on YouTube, we got Wabash saying, I hate this pursuit of thinness for phones just to have a massive camera bump. I don't want the whole phone to be thinner. I want the whole phone to be a uniform thickness to get better battery life. I absolutely hear you. I think I'm okay with having both. I want one that's thick and one that's thin. I get the appeal of having thin devices. It makes sense for a certain subsect of people. It makes sense as like a designer thing. It makes sense as just like you push engineering really far when you have to try to fit the same technology into a smaller space. I get it. I like the new iPad Pros. They're very thin, very cool, like it. I just want my Pro devices to be thicker. I want them to have the battery. I want to have both. I want thin and thick. Just, hey, that's how I want life. Elderman saying community notes on YouTube is the return of the dislike button we didn't know we wanted, but the one we definitely needed. So that was actually something that I didn't really discuss when it came to the introduction of community notes on YouTube that I'm kind of confused about, right? Like the stated verbal reason or written reason from YouTube as to why they got rid of the dislike button was because of brigading and the fact that communities would potentially kind of work together to downvote certain videos to make it so that the creator felt bad about themselves, and it was for creators' mental health that they got rid of the dislike button. Fine, whatever, a lot of people don't agree with that. Sure, if that's the reasoning, how is community notes not the same thing, but also potentially a little worse because it's now written out? Now they can verbally actually write out why they think you're an idiot. And I mean, maybe YouTube might have some sort of algorithm that won't just post hateful notes as community notes, but with how many videos are out there and how many different creators there are, I can see this being used to kind of brigade certain creators and make it so that it's very difficult for them to exist on the platform, and it creates a worse problem than the dislike button, in my opinion. And so I'm surprised YouTube is doing it. Do I think it's a good feature? Yes. Do I think we should have the dislike button? Also yes. YouTube's own stated reasons don't feel like they match up here. And then we got Casually Weird saying, why is everyone who gets sponsored by AliExpress suddenly buying Transformer earbuds? I'll let you know why. It's because we agreed to do a sponsorship deal with AliExpress, and they said, hey, out of everything that's on our website, here's dozens of items that you can choose from to kind of promote in this ad sale that we have. And so I chose the two different things that I was like, hey, these are awesome. You can buy them from AliExpress. They can be cheaper, especially if you use the new coupon code for the summer sale. And so I chose the Logitech MX Master 3S, and I chose that Ambernick handheld console because I was like, these are both cool things that you, the audience, will enjoy. And then they just sent the Transformers earbuds, and they were like, talk about these too. And I was like, yeah, like they're not the worst thing in the world. And if you want to spend the money on them, like I don't necessarily mind letting you know they're available on AliExpress. So that's why they kind of just they added that on as part of the promotional agreement, which if they were garbage, we wouldn't have talked about them, but because they were all right, we threw them in as well. And then we got Casualized saying, I'm quite surprised by the fact that you didn't even mention Snapdragon X Elite. It literally released today, and it's one of the most exciting things in the tech world right now, to which I responded with the thing I covered earlier in Hot News, which is the fact that these devices weren't really sent out to reviewers. They actually only landed at people's doorsteps either late 2 days ago or early yesterday, and so there's not enough time to have that information out. And especially, like, hot news cannot be, and it will not be, simply because of how my life is structured, a breaking news show. I just can't actually do that. I have certain rhythms in my life that I need to abide by, certain schedules that I need to hit. And so hot news has to be finalized at a certain time of day, and it has to be edited at a certain time of day so that it can come out on a consistent release cadence. And if there's something that's breaking that happens at like 5 a.m. Eastern before hot news comes out, it'll just get included in the next episode, right? If there's not enough details when I'm getting ready to record, I just can't actually fit it into the episode. And so I talked about it today. It's a big deal. I agree. There just wasn't enough information out the day prior for me to give you anything in the hot news the day of launch. We're working on a few things behind the scenes to make sure that we're a bit more prepared as UFD tech to have videos ready on things like launch days. But as it stands right now, it's very difficult for me, Kyler, and my team to keep up with everything as it's happening. And as we continue to grow, hopefully we can maybe do a little bit more in that regard. And then we got Muttley saying, yo, does the new Ryzen 9000 series require new motherboards? To which Cute Advancer did not answer the question by saying AMD will support AM5 to supposedly 2027. Yes, but they will make new options when they come out if you really like USB 4 or something. So that was a very convoluted answer, and my guess is if somebody's asking do they require new motherboards, they're just looking for a simple yes or no. No, it does not require a new motherboard. If you have an X670, X670E, B650, B650E, or an A620, they should be supported with a BIOS update. You should be able to get that to work. There are going to be new motherboards, but they are not required. Answering when the socket's supported to doesn't answer the question of does the new chip require a new motherboard. We can be simple here. We can condense information into digestible formats when we're trying to help people. Do they need more new motherboards? No, you're good. If you got one already, you're fine, as long as it's the latest ones. And that's the latest I have on hot news. I'm done here. We'll see you back here for more of the hottest tech news tomorrow, my friends. Goodbye.